Hey everyone, welcome to the Extra Mile. This is G5.
Justin here. And that's Caleb.
Hey,
Caleb in Caleb's Corner.
The
Yeah,
corner
I have a real corner.
of
You have real
Caleb.
corner now with blue light. Look at
And
you.
it's
Welcome to the club.
Illuminated.
He's officially
We had a final light that we were able to use.
YouTube IT person. He's getting ready to tell us how to use some software. Anyway, we are a conversational podcast meant to be an easy listen for Christians, an engaging listen for those thinking about Jesus. And today we're talking about moral law of nature. And it's not to be too deep. It's just talking about morality. And if you're into something like that, if you did good or you did bad today, then you're into it. Stick around. Anyway, Justin, what'd you do good?
What did I do good? I really try to do good every day.
Do you really? You wake up thinking that?
Yes, because what I really want to do is, that was interesting. What I really want to do is go back in time and relive my childhood and just be thankful of what I had in hindsight. You know, I think it's fascinating how some things can haunt you. Like, oh, I wish if only I could have just done that, what have you. So I really try to live every day with the mindset of, okay, let's go do this today and get some things done. And of course, then it's hard for me to disconnect, like go on vacation. It's hard for me to go on vacation because I feel like I'm not getting anything accomplished, so I can't really relax.
Yeah, I feel that everything at home is illuminating in the back, and it's just like, or ruminating, and it's just, causing a stir.
So how can you actually disconnect? Because I feel like, well, I mean, if it's a problem, I feel like I should solve it,
right?
You know, or what have you. But yeah, when it comes to just sort of interactions with people, I really do actively now try to smile, try to have a contagious attitude of happiness, or if we're all in collective misery, just to try to bring either face it and talk about it, dissect it, and trying to work through
It's
the problem.
hard when other people don't want to, return or like,
well, and
go on, receive what you're saying and go on, go to your level. Like, I'm going to respond with the same amount of joy.
Or if it, once again, like collective, that's an interesting talk as well. Like if you're doing collective misery, if somebody's really having a hard time, what do they need? Do they just need somebody to sit and listen to them? And can I be that person?
Right.
But, it's hard whenever you're trying to get a stick of gum at the gas station and it's like, hey, how are you? Well, let me tell you. And it's sort of like, I don't really have 2.5 hours to devote.
You want a stick?
Would you like a piece of gum? And so that's hard too. But
no, that is hard.
But maybe that's the person that needed you the most.
I've had an epiphany the other day at a gas station, buying something at the counter, walking up like I normally do. And usually blinders are on. I just want to purchase this thing and then leave.
Right.
But gas station's a unique place. You walk into that environment, and this cashier is talking to this cashier, and I quickly realized, like, they're including me into the conversation, but only for maybe 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 2 if they're slow. And I'm just trying to get out of there, which then creates a tension or awkwardness. And I'm like, I need to start approaching things as if I have now been invited into the conversation. Maybe that would lead to other problems, but I don't know. It was interesting. Like, I need to come into this like, hey, I don't know, just with more presence, more engaging in that person. They're having a conversation. Maybe I could throw something in, but then that could be annoying. So, but this is what is going on in my head the whole time.
That's interesting. I like that because it almost harkens to a humanist touch.
Yes.
Where you're reaching out to a fellow human, where they're not just an employee who's supposed to ring you up and then that's our daily exchange. Thanks, have a nice life. It's more of, you're like a living, breathing person, who is probably at whatever point in their shift. That's a concept. This word is not very commonly talked about, but I was fascinated by it. It's called sonder.
Yeah, you've told me about this.
Okay, so
I found this.
I'm a broken record after a while.
That's okay. I had already come across that term because I had listened to a music album called Sonder.
Okay.
Kennedy, Dermot Kennedy.
I think
Kennedy,
you sent that
something
to me
like
one
that.
time.
Yeah, and it's pretty. I liked it, especially on a rainy day. And I came across that too. Everyone's living their own experiences.
Right.
And it's like that word connects us deeper than empathy.
Yeah.
It's something like our stories now kind of come together
Yes.
for a moment in time.
If you think of all the novels of everyone's life going on right now,
Yeah.
that this chapter in this paragraph, our novels converge.
Yeah.
Where I become a character in your novel and you become one in mine.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
It's almost like when I was walking the streets of Chicago and I had just gone to a baseball game, and later I saw the pitcher walk by me and we made eye contact.
That's so
And
cool.
I'm like, he obviously did not want to be talked to.
Yeah.
You could tell in his face, but I knew that I knew him. And now every time I watch him, I'm thinking, I'm in his brain.
Yeah.
But does he think about me? Probably not. Not as much as I'm thinking about him
That
right
guy.
now.
And he threw off his game. It's like, that guy. He looked at me.
He's going to have a dream about you and then wake up and be like, why is this guy in my head?
Why is he reoccurring in my dreams?
So are we talking about influence? Is that
Yeah.
what we're talking about?
Well, this actually does speak to what we were talking about, which is morality. You've been reading Mere Christianity,
I have
C.S.
been.
Lewis,
I have
and he
been.
begins that book, Mere Christianity, by talking about the moral law.
Yeah.
And all people stem from or have some sort of moral basis, which is what he's going to conclude with. And our conversation just now kind of lends to that.
Yeah.
We are all engaging with each other, whether we realize it or not,
Mhm.
with moral presuppositions, moral standards already intuned. And that's how we're already engaging with each other, where I'm walking down the street and I realize that he realizes, so I'm going to respond with what I think is the most appropriate response, or I'm ordering something at the gas station. I'm engaging, with what I think is moral, but what I think doesn't really matter, because what I'm going to make here is that God has given us a moral standard to live by.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis makes that point as well. It's, a version, or at least a foundation, of what we see from the moral argument as well, when it comes to a popular Christian apologetic, is that God has all given us a moral standard. I remember when I was, on my soul search, and a big one for me was the moral argument,
Mm-hmm.
when I heard an apologist say, look, if there's a moral law, then there has to be a moral law giver. And I'm just like, that's I don't know, for me that just hit home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It can't just come up out of accident. At least it doesn't seem like it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that murder is wrong, and the person in China knows that murder is wrong, and I've never met that person or communicated anything to them. This seems more than just herd instinct or culture or just an expanse or trial by error, murder trial by error. Are you serious? So there seems to be some sort of intuition here that they know, I know, therefore it was given.
Yeah. It's fascinating when you look at that writing, and originally it was given on the radio in a more concise
You can tell
version.
when you're reading it. Yeah.
And then he sort of fleshed it out into a book, and he even mentions that in the introduction. But the time period for this is in the 40s during World War II. It's actively going on.
Is it during World War II? I had to look this up. That's interesting.
Well, and I could be wrong about that, but it is during that time, because he specifically talks about the Nazi Party and the fact that they're currently at war, and it's interesting to bring up a concept in consideration of morality, because that's precisely why people don't want to go to war. That's precisely why people do want to go to war. And so to say, well, there are people a few hundred miles away who are murdering other people, who are invading, who are taking their things, who are destroying people's lives, stealing their belongings. I mean, and now that we know in hindsight all of the atrocities that happened during World War II, is that all over the world it seems that there was raping and there was pillaging, and
For sure.
and there was the Holocaust. Millions of people were taken, their belongings were taken.
Yes.
Things were plundered, and then obviously the atrocities that you have that were currently going on. And it's an interesting question to say, are we not all beholden to the moral code? Like some moral obligation of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And that he starts there. and then is very quick to say, and I'm not specifically talking about God or Christianity or anything. What I'm just talking about is at a base level, if you boil it all down, what points can we agree on?
Yeah. And I think this is important because when it comes to the application here, or why even talk about moral law, if we all have it, he's opening up the door to God. That he's opening the
Yeah.
door for everyone to see God.
Yeah.
And our sense of the standard morality helps us see that lawgiver. Romans 2 kind of speaks to this. Romans 2:14 through 16. For whenever the Gentiles, that's everyone who's not a Jew, right? So they're not subject to the law,
The old law.
the old law.
The law of Moses.
So they would have just been living with however they wanted to live. He says, who do not have the law, do by nature the things required by the law.
They just naturally do
Yeah,
them.
these, they weren't told or taught, these who do not have the law are a law to themselves. They show that the work of the law is written in their hearts, as their conscience bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or else defend them on the day when God will judge. So throughout every day, you have, I do, person behind the counter has a conscience that, is either accusing them or defending their actions there. And so he says it's written on their hearts. And on that day, God will judge the secrets of human hearts according to the gospel through Jesus Christ, which that last point is kind of interesting. We go deep. We went deep into Christianity. But the idea is for us as Christians today, we have Jesus. We have him living within our hearts.
Right. Well, and that is one of the narratives of the New Testament, is that, and even Paul says it may even be Romans, where he talks about being a Jew of Jews. I know the law. I've studied the law.
Yeah.
I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees. I love the law, but it was not sufficient. Knowing that right and wrong is right and wrong is not enough motivation to always do right.
Yeah.
And that's his point, where there's something that God recognizes in man that we need to prevent us. And the great way to illustrate that from the biblical text is David. David being a man after God's own heart. How many times did David fall and sin and stumble and make bad decisions? And why did he do that? Why did David do this? Why did David look? Why did David number the people? Over and over and over again. And so God's conclusion in the New Testament narrative is they need me inside of them as a guide.
Yeah. They need a perfect example.
Precisely.
Right. Which is Jesus. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel. And what's interesting is that last verse is that, well, Jew or Gentile, with the law or without the law, you're going to be judged based on the standard of the gospel that is Jesus Christ. So of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, our life should be just that. And Christianity helps us put that together in our life. It helps us realize that and then go out and do that.
It goes a level back away from Christianity. And obviously this is a biased podcast whenever we're talking about Christianity because we're all Christians.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to discuss. But I appreciate what C.S. Lewis was doing by, I'm not talking about creed or belief in anything. I'm just talking about us as humans. Let's just envision that there isn't a God.
Right.
Then we obviously know, and I loved the point that he made about being a traitor, where if there is no moral code, if we're all just societally keeping one another in check because of power struggle, because it's more of a law of nature, what about somebody like Benedict Arnold? What about somebody who is a turncoat and who is paid money to lie and cheat and steal and subvert this community versus another community? Why is that, if there is no moral code, why is that less acceptable to us somehow? Like, when has that ever worked out for anybody who's abandoned their community to then subvert that community for another?
Right.
And that's an interesting point to me. That sends that idea home, is we don't want to be a Benedict Arnold.
No.
We don't
David
want to be a
didn't either,
Judas.
right? And David went and hung out with the Philistines for a second.
Yep.
Yeah, and it wasn't a good plan. He got himself in some hot water.
And God was with them because it would have been very easy for the Philistines to just completely murder him sometime, but they didn't.
They didn't.
And even so much so that David was committed. Well, yeah, he was committed, and the rest of the kings of the Philistines like, we don't want him around, like he didn't get to fight for you. And then his little buddy king, who was also a Philistine, was like, I'm sorry, David, you can't go to the battle. That is way underplaying in a comedic way what happened. But it was just sort of an interesting situation where if you look at just humans being humans, if you abandon your people and you sell them out, like it's being a sellout, you guys sold out. There's something there where you have abandoned us. You're a traitor. And that is something that a moral law does exist. There is a standard that even if we admit it or not, that all humans are subject to, and we understand that.
There's a commonality.
Yes.
And so if you keep reading the book, and I've read through the book before, you're going to notice it becomes more and more Christian.
Yeah.
By the end of the book, he's talking about things like faith and things of like hope and love. And it's just getting people on board with, hey, there has to be a God.
And there has to be a God because that code that he's
Yeah.
talking about, that if you deny it or not, it's there.
Yeah.
And so that's the point that you have to come to a decision. Is there a code or is there not a code? And there obviously is, as we can continue to talk. There is a moral code.
Yeah.
Whether it's given by humans, but then what are humans doing? We can absolutely disagree on things. So his point is that there is a God.
Yeah.
Because God gave humans, he wrote it in our hearts, some code.
Yeah. And I think the scriptures lay this out even from the beginning.
Yes.
God made man, and he said it is good. And he made man and women in his image. And then they famously, if you read Genesis 1, 2, and 3, Chapter 3, they eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is what they're more supposed to. But I want you to put emphasis on good and evil, right? Once they do that, you read that in Genesis 3:22, there is obviously the standard now. It assumes a standard of what is good and what is evil. And of course, throughout time now, we're wrestling with that. But there is a standard.
Yes.
And
God being not only the source giver, but then the answer to our own behavior. Because it's very evident in C.S. Lewis's book, or at least the parts that I've been able to read, the Bible, which I have read, through any law-giving code that man may put on themselves, is there is a standard that we have to abide, but we don't always abide by it.
Yeah.
And so that core pillar of truth of, I know what's good and bad, and I don't always do good.
Yeah.
And every one of us have the unfortunate capacity to we have to say that because every one of us has done something bad.
We've all done bad. We've all sinned, fallen short of the glory of God, but God is the standard, and we should try to strive for, after his glory. But with that said, this isn't to just persuade everyone. The moral argument has persuaded some and hasn't persuaded others.
Yeah.
Right? But if we could just get on board for a second and have a conversation and just think about some of these issues, maybe we can come to some common ground and do what's right. And if we're doing what's right, maybe look in the mirror and realize I'm doing what's right because, well, God is right.
Yeah.
And that's the key there. Well, I think with that, go so. If you want to know more about the Bible or you have any questions, our email is in the description below. You can DM us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for a church family or you're in the Lubbock area, we invite you to come visit and hang out with us in Milwaukee. We love for you to find a church who practices the love of Christ.